Namaskar. Welcome to Conversations with Rakesh. Here's today's question. I got this question from one of my social media personal messages. Rakesh, you talk a lot about books. I'm very interested to know what are the good books you have read this year. I love these kind of questions because it lets me talk about myself. So why would not I take it up? Your wish is my command. I've been reading a lot of different books. I must confess two things. One, I'm a very slow reader. So sometimes it takes me upwards of a month to finish a book, maybe two. And the second thing is I don't read one book at a time. I read multiple books at a time because it gives me my ways of choosing what I want to read. And I also will probably show you the variety of topics that I read. And I probably pick up things that interest me a lot. So in the last few months, I have picked up a lot of books which are connected to science and history. And the third subject which I picked up was this whole area of art and creativity. These three subjects I'm obsessed with these days. So my book reading patterns are similar to that. Now, why do I choose books on history? Is because of a very important reason that why do we need to learn history? I think history is one subject that I regret not investing my time when I was a kid and when I went to college. And I think we should because history is the only subject that lets us go into the past to get perspectives on ideas and values of that period. Because when you understand the people who were living in that time and understood the challenges they faced, it will give you a sense of what value systems and what decisions they made and what kind of ideas they thought through, which is very relevant when you come to the present because it helps you look at the present very differently. So here are some books of history. Now let me tell you the other two genres. Science. I'm like one of the biggest science enthusiasts. Now, that doesn't mean that I'll write exams and crack marks. I'm not that kind of a science enthusiast. I genuinely enjoy reading about science. How do people discover or invent things? And I am an engineer by education, so not a great engineer by marks, but I enjoyed learning about machines and systems, and I still do. So I spend a lot of time reading about science. And third is creativity and art. So here are my books that I'm reading in the last few months that I'm going to show you one by one. Book number one. This is a little heavy book, but an amazing book. It's about the Nobel Prize. It's written by Burton Feldman. I must also tell you that Nobel Prize, there is a fiction book written on the Nobel Prize. It's called The Prize. I thoroughly enjoyed reading that book. And while it is fiction, it gave a brilliant insight on the foundation that creates these prizes and the politics and the human problems of that group of people. So I read that and I've been fascinated by Nobel Prize ever since. I think I read that book about 3 years ago and I've bought a lot of books on science, but I really enjoyed reading this book because it gives a very good view on how this institution has impacted the world. It has its flaws. That part we all know. It is very controversial. It has its own favorites. It has serious issues on race, gender, all that stuff. But again, if you ignore those flaws, I think the institution has done a marvelous impact. And this book talks about the man who created that institution, which is Alfred Nobel. Complete 2 or 3 chapters on his life and what a complex human being he was. And then how they created those awards. And it gave me insight into all the topics that I wanted the source of. And this book gave me the source of physics, then chemistry, and then life sciences. And I'm now using this to proceed in my hunger to understand scientific inventions and discoveries better. So pick up this book if you can. Little difficult, but I think it's written in not very difficult ways for a person like me. Difficult in the sense of volume and the information because it is a lot. and I took a lot of time to finish this book. So this is book number one. Thoroughly enjoyed this book. Here's book number two. This was an amazing find. This is Anirudh Kanisetti's book, The Lords of the Deccan. He has demystified the history of South India like nobody else. And he talks about a dynasty which none of us probably knew more than few things of, but he's talked about it in such a great detail and even explained things in almost like a thriller. His style of writing is very good. The book is absolute delight to read. But I've been living in South India for 25 years. I didn't know many things. And books like this are amazing documents for you to pick up where you come from, where are we living. And he does a fantastic job of making this topic easy. There are very few books on the history of South India. I would probably put this as the number one that you must pick first before you go anywhere else. And he's done a great job of demystifying the Chalukya dynasty and how it impacted India and why it has been forgotten, and why in India history has its own ways of looking at things, and why we need to bring out these topics and talk about it very openly, because it does not give the full idea of who we are as a society. Anirudh does it very, very well. Very nice book, Lords of the Deccan. Third book, a little fun book. I picked it up for my daughter. This is called The Mysterious Life of Dr. Barry. And I talked about it in one of my lectures at IIM Bangalore in the Vista program. This is a fascinating story of a person called Dr. Barry, who after his death, it was found out that it was not a man, but a woman all along. And the name of the woman was Margaret Bulkley. And how did she even become a doctor? Because in those days, in 1910s, sorry, 1810s, you could not have studied medicine if you were a woman. She somehow became a man. She dressed up like a man and changed her name to Dr. Barry, and passed through, became a doctor in the army, and for I think 50, 60 years after working in the army, retired as Inspector General of Hospitals. Can you believe that? And has credited the first successful cesarean section to her name. And I gave this book to my daughter, but I read it first. What a fascinating story of determination, grit, and challenges. Sometimes, when you look at our problems and when you read the problems people like her, Margaret, have gone through, we sometimes are humbled at how simple is our problem and how difficult was their problem, which is why we should read about stories of history. So this is a great book, Mysterious Life of Dr. Barry, written by Lisa Williamson. Short, simple, cute little book, but a wonderful eye-opener. You can Google on her name, Dr. Barry and Margaret Bulkley, and you'll find some huge articles on her and the connection of her with various other stalwarts of that era. Please read this book. Here is another one, uh, a beautiful book called Art Matters by Neil Gaiman. It's like it has its own little art things, and it has been illustrated by Chris Riddle. Lovely, simple book, and you should listen to Neil Gaiman's talk. One of my other favorite books, which I keep talking about, and it's right here somewhere. I can't find. Yeah, there it is. It's called Zen Pencils. In Zen Pencils, there is Neil Gaiman's Make Good Art speech. So I think similar to that is this book. So simple read, makes you feel good about art and creativity and the challenges we face through, and such a delight. You can just relax yourself by these simple, nice books that are there. And then the final one, which I picked up and thoroughly enjoyed, is this Grant Snyder's The Shape of Ideas. Very visual book, absolutely delight. And it has these simple illustrations that sometimes you're stuck with your idea, confusion, and he illustrates it and makes you understand those challenges, which are very important for your own creative progress. So very nice book, Grant Snyder, Shape of Ideas. He has two other books. I picked all three of them and I finished reading this. I'll pick up the other two. So here is my overall list that I talked to you about. Book number 1, Nobel Prize by Burton Feldman. Book number 2, The Mysterious Adventures Life of Dr. Barry by Lisa Williamson. Book number 3, Shape of Ideas by Grant Snyder. Book number 4, Neil Gaiman, Art Matters. And book number 5, Anirudh Kanisetti, Lords of the Deccan. And this is what I've been gorging myself on. I have many more books I am beginning to read, and I'm somewhere in the quarter or the mid, and maybe at the end of the year I'll share with you a few more books that I've enjoyed. Please read. Books are amazing ports to take you to different lands, open your minds, enrich your lives, and it will help you think better. So on that note, pick up any simple book. You don't have to pick big books and show off. Simple small books are good enough. Enjoy the process of learning. Enjoy those things going in your brain and giving you ideas, and let it shape your life forward. Stay safe.